the governor, Fubara, setting out to present the 2025 budget to the Oko Jumbo-led Assembly. River State Governor Siminalayi Fubara has announced that he would present the state's 2025 budget to the Victor Oko Jumbo-led State House of Assembly. Well, the governor noted that the state government would continue to collaborate with the Assembly to improve the lives of Rivers residents, highlighting the positive relationship between the executive and legislative branches as demonstrated in the screening of nominees and the prompt passage of executive bills. So Fubara made this statement at the official commissioning of 2 ultramaritan community town halls and the launch of the tertiary scholarship and empowerment program by the speaker at Akiama and Aganya communities in Boni local government area on Saturday. This was contained in a statement issued in Port Harcourt on Sunday by the governor's chief press secretary, Nelson Jokodi. A lot of issues within Rivers State, talking about the allocation to the local government, the Supreme Court verdict, which of course gave this directive that the local governments must be on their own. That is the issue of autonomy. Well, joining us to expand this conversation is a social commentator and public affairs analyst in the person of Mr. Paulinus Peter. Mr. Paulinus, you're welcome on Niger Delta today.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir. Good afternoon.
It's good to be here once again.
Well, a lot of back and forth when it comes to Rivers. It would have been hoped that since the announcement of to the governor, Siminalayi Fubara, that is, that he should represent the 2024 budget appropriately, since it is believed that legally or by walking by the books, it wasn't done the appropriate way. But here we are, the governor is saying that he's still going to go ahead to present the 2025 budget to the Oko Jumbo. Comprises just about 3 people. To what extent is this going to cause another uproar, a different version that is, in Rivers State?
Well, the issue in Rivers State is something that all well-meaning Nigerians should be very careful about. And that's because the implications is not just limited to Rivers State, but to the larger Nigerian public and society. The issue with the governor is this mentality of feeling that being a governor, that he has the jurisdiction to interpret what the law says and what have you. But you and I know that in Nigeria we are practicing constitutional democracy, where powers of government, are carefully and categorically, grouped into 3, where you have the executive, you have the legislature, and of course the judiciary. And it is very explicit and express that it is only the judicial arm of government that has the powers or limitations or what have you to interpret, whatever issues we might have arising from governance, legal aspect, and the constitution. So in a situation where the judiciary has come up to say, look, as far as the matters before the court is concerned, that it is this other side of the assembly that is what the law recognizes. So it is expected that as the chief executive of the state, as somebody that has sworn to uphold the constitution of the country, that irrespective of how the law goes, the governor ought to have first and foremost complied with the judgment of the court, while see how it can in his own way vacate the verdict of the appellate court. We are talking about the Court of Appeal in this instance. So we have a situation whereby the governor, irrespective of the pronouncements that have come from the lower court and down to the appellate court, the governor is not complying with it, but rather choose his own way of deciding who should be the members of the assembly. I don't think it's something that well-meaning Nigerians should condone, irrespective of political affiliation, irrespective of the sides and the factions that one might belong to. We should, for God's sake, do and carry out some actions that will actually enhance the rule of law. That is how our politics could develop. That is how the society could have peace. So a situation where there's a whole lot of sentiments and emotions whipping into the polity does not occur well. And of course, as I said earlier, that is going to have a far-reaching effect, not just in Rivers State, because it's setting a very dangerous precedent in our polity and of course in our jurisprudence. So it's something that is catastrophic, it's something that the Supreme Court should expedite actions so that there can actually be a way forward and an end to these River State issues.
Okay, so is it that you don't see Governor Fubara managing the situation well, because he's not the first to actually depend on state court rulings when it comes to governance in River State, and the FCT minister did that. So is it not possible that he can manage the situation properly to make sure that everything stays within the state?
Well, it's not about managing, it's about what the law says. And the fact that one must have done it before and got away with does not make it right. I don't know if you understand my point. What is wrong is wrong. And as I said earlier, that we should be mindful of our actions and inactions while in government or in any public office and that. So if the governor actually wants to manage it, it should be in line with the letters and the spirit of the constitutions and not what the governor feels in his own thinking that it should be. If we allow that to thrive in our polity and in our society, of course, we should all know that at the end of the day, it will lead to a situation where people will resort to self-help. And of course, you know the attendant effect of that at the end of the day, it is chaos and anarchy that will prevail in the polity. And by that time, I feel it will be too late. So that's why all the players should actually see to the fact that they respect the letters and the spirit of the Constitution. And if we are to be relieved from what has just happened in the USA, where the former president of the country and said, look, it's not all the time we should have it in our own way, but what is paramount, what is important is respecting the letters of the Constitution. So the governor of Rivers State and any other governor in Nigeria, not to manage the issues of the state on whims and caprices or the emotions and sentiments of the governor, but they should be guided by the rule of law, by the letters of the Constitution. For God's sake, we are practicing constitutional democracy. It goes beyond our opinion. It goes beyond what favors us. It's what the law says.
Okay, now the NLC has come out to say, first of all, appreciating the state government for the 85,000 naira minimum wage, which is about to be enacted. Do you think with the stoppage of the state's allocation by the CBN from the court, do you think he will be able to? Do you think the internally generated revenue of the state will be able to shoulder this financial burden?
Well, the issue of NLC is a story for another day, because as far as I'm concerned, NLC has been part of the larger problem we have in this country.
But they're just speaking for their comrades in the state.
That's what I'm saying. that we have a situation where our labor leaders, behave and speak more as political leaders. And we have the political leaders speaking as religious leaders, while the religious leaders are now speaking as politicians and, political leaders. And that creates a whole lot of misnomer. And that's the problem with Nigeria. As is a country where misnomer and abnormality seems to characterize the way we do things. Well, and it's quite unfortunate. So what I expected the NLC to do is, for the fact that the matter is within the court of competent jurisdiction, is for them to have, held their peace and see what will be the outcome of the Supreme Court.
Okay, but now the governor has said he will still go ahead to present the 2025 budget to the Oko Jumbo-led assembly. Do you think with the stoppage of their allocations, he will be able to pull through with managing the state with the internally generated revenue? As
I said earlier, if you look at the judgment coming from the appeal court, the judgment also affects, because the internally generated revenue passes through banks, it passes through financial institutions. So the judgment is not just saying, look, it's not all about federal allocation or allocation to local government, but whatever money, that accrues to the state government, whether internally generated or federal allocation, that the government of Rivers State should stay clear, pending the determination of the matter that is at the Supreme Court. So for the governor to go ahead and say he's going to do this and that, for me, I feel that is another form of illegality, in quotes.
It's a
because
Paulinus.
what will happen if at the end of the day, the judgment of the Supreme Court, goes to the contrary? How is the governor going to undo all this? So I have expected the governor to have waited as a leader in this category, to have waited and rather pursue the matter to a logical conclusion
Mr.
at the
Paulinus,
Supreme Court before he will take actions
let me
that
quickly-
will further
let me-
affect
let
the
me quickly
quality.
come in there,
Okay.
Mr. Paulinus. Now let's look at this from the angle of how it affects the generality of Rivers citizens. You're asking them to wait, and you know how our judiciary works. You know what time it takes for dispensation of justice or conclusion of cases. To what extent are they going to wait? And how are they going to be able to take care of their welfare and other issues? The NLC is talking about urging the judiciary to exercise caution in issuing rulings that could increase the hardships of common citizens in Rivers State. Address the issue of how this affects the Rivers people.
There is no dispute about that it has, grave dangers and impact, albeit negative, on the Rivers people. But the point is this: should the labor in Rivers State ought to have waited to this point before they will cry foul? I am of the view that, having studied the scenario and understood, the impact of the pronouncement of this court on the issues and welfare of workers, that are at the point of initiating this case, that the labor ought to have joined as a body that will, at the end of the day, affected by what is the outcome of the judicial pronouncement, and not just waiting once the outcome has now come, you are now trying to see how you undo it. And that has been the problem, with our country. We seems to be after outcome, forgetting that, life is procedural, that there are processes that leads to certain outcomes. I don't know if you understand my point. So we should, as a country, sit down and give, put a stop to this issue of trying to address symptoms of problems rather than going after the root causes of problems. We should put a stop to us, going after, having this mentality of fire brigade, approach to settling matters and the rest of it. We should not wait for certain things to happen before we begin to see how we react. So people should be proactive. Leaders as different strata should be proactive. Leaders should be intelligent. Leaders should kind of sit in and analyze and try to bring foresight into governance, whether at the part of the Nigerian Labour Congress or the part of the civil servant, for them to know that certain actions of government are bound to affect the people. And this is where I will blame the citizens.
Okay.
Because we of people of this country, we always feel that whatever people in government do, that is their business, it does not concern us and all that. But we forget to know the fact that at the end of the day, whatever decisions the people in government take is bound to affect us, whether positively or negatively. And that is why we should be part of the process.
Well, another issue that really captures our attention is the events in Edo State. The government has chided the governor-elect, Monday Okpebo, and his aides to focus on organizing their alleged 5 billion inauguration ceremony and leave the outgoing governor, Mr. Godwin Obaseki, out of the, again, alleged petty politics. So in a statement, Special Advisor to the Governor on Media Projects, Crusoe Osage, said it was regrettable that the new government was starting on the sorry note of lavishing, in quote, the state's resources on the November 12 inauguration instead of thinking of how to hit the ground running. Also recall that the outgoing Edo State Governor, Governor Obaseki, was alleged to have fled the state, but reports emerging show that the governor, contrary to claims of his fleeing Nigeria, in fact did not flee. Governor Godwin Obaseki of Edo State had dissolved his cabinet, you'd recall, ahead of the 12th November swearing in of Monday Okpebo of the All Progressives Congress as the new governor of the state. Mr. Obaseki, who came into office on 12th November 2016, is expected to end his 8-year tenure tomorrow, November 12th. He dissolved the cabinet shortly after a valedictory session held at the government house on Friday in Benin, and the motion for this dissolution of the State Executive Council for 2020-2024 was moved by Godwin Godwin Zomobayo, the man whose appointment by Mr. Obaseki as deputy governor was nullified by the court. The commissioner for budget and economic planning, Osilama Okwofu, seconded the motion. Now, the valedictory session, the governor, as expected, commended members of the council for helping him drive the government's vision of making Edo great again. Mr. Paulinus, we know that the trajectories in Edo State points to one thing. We are set to have a new governor in the person of Monday Okpebo, and he's supposed to be inaugurated tomorrow. Now, allegations back and forth. First, the Monday Okpebo camp were of the opinion that the outgoing governor fled the state. Who knows what reasons they are pegging to that effect. And then the camp of the outgoing governor is out to say that instead of looking for cheap publicity or trying to talk down the outgoing governor, the incoming administration should focus on the alleged 5 billion inauguration party. What do you make of all of these events in Edo State, building up to the inauguration of the new administration of Monday Okpebo?
Okay, well, for me, the issue of the governor of Obaseki fleeing the state, is still at the realm of allegations that has not been substantiated. So I wouldn't want us to dwell much more on that. And since it has not been substantiated, since there are still, fireworks from different camps and this. But what really caught my attention is the issue of the people, of the people of the People Democratic Party saying that the incoming government should mind, their business and what have you. For God's sake, government is a continuum. The way the governor ends would definitely affect the way the incoming government starts. And government is about institutions. Government is about processes. It's not about individual. So it is not something we should say that this has been an Obaseki thing, that he should do it the way he likes. And that has been my major concern, because that seems to be the culture in our political culture. That seems to be the way we act, across the different states of the federation, that whatever the chief executive is doing is his business, is his tenure, he should continue to do with it. For God's sake, there should be, that concept of accountability, where we call our leaders to account for their actions, because they are there, holding the resources of the state in trust for the people, and they should be accountable on how they utilize, the resources of the state. People should be encouraged to ask questions, and where questions are being asked, answers should be given rather than resorting to blame game. Blame game is what has put Nigeria in this quagmire that we have found ourselves. So it is right to ask questions. The way the government ends matters, because it will affect the way the incoming government is going to start up. It's a double-way thing.
Talking about cordiality in transition from one administration to the other, are you aware that the incoming administration of Monday Okpebo did not extend an invitation to the outgoing Edo State governor to the inauguration that is supposed to hold tomorrow? What would be your take on that? Well, there seems to be a rift somewhere.
For me, I am one person that feels that energy should be concentrated on dealing with the fundamentals and not on peripherals. And this is a man that has, superintended over the state for 8 good years. So what has you not been invited for an action of a day has to do with you. For God's sake, if you have actually done the things that put you in the hearts of the people, you shouldn't beg for an invitation. So for the governor to even cry out that he has not been, for me, is an indictment that he has not meant well for the Edo people and the rest of it. And you talk about cordiality. I have this to say, that the fact that there should be cordiality between the incoming government and the outgoing does not mean there shouldn't be accountability. Because this is one aspect that has been grossly lacking in our polity. We don't seem to ask questions, and it's not good for our polity. And our leaders, are on this. Our leaders are capitalizing on this, taking the people unwillingness or ignorance to ask questions for granted and do whatever they want to do. So questions should be asked. It has nothing to do with cordiality. It has nothing to do with opposition. It has nothing to do with party politics. It has a whole lot to do with how do you spend the resources that was meant for the development of Edo State and for the betterment of Edo people.
Okay, now talking about accountability and a one-day event, as you put it. The inaugural ceremony is expected to allegedly gulp a whooping sum of 5 billion naira. What do you say about that?
Well, for me, I like hearing from the both sides of the divides. I've listened to the camp of the outgoing governor, and I've equally listened to the transition committee put on by the incoming governor. You know, they are of the view that they have not presented a formal budget to that effect, that the incoming governor is funding it from his personal purse. And if that is the truth, for God's sake, the amount in questions should not be a problem. So far, it has nothing to do with public funds.
Okay.
That's my take. That's
okay,
my
and
perspective.
if he goes ahead to fund a one-day ceremony with 5 billion naira, you think the people will not be suspicious of the fact that he will want to get that off the coffers of public funds?
Well, for me, I still maintain the fact that if he has nothing to do with public funds, then...
No, during the recovery, he might want to recover that money.
It's too early for us.
During campaigns.
It's too early for us, you know, to bring that. One thing we should also do is giving our leaders that benefit of doubt, because a polity that is characterized by suspicion.
But you just said we're not asking questions.
Of course, we need to ask questions, but there should be a limitation to asking questions. There should be, you know, an objective to whatever we say or we do. I don't know if you understand my point. If I am saying that I have so amount of money to spend for my functions, you have the right to ask questions. But if at the end of the day you discover truly that it is my money, I don't think you'll be fair to me to tell me how I should spend my money and how I shouldn't.
They're not telling him how to spend
This is what we are saying.
There is a fear.
I've been, you know, acting and the rest of it. But then, why ask our leaders questions? We should also have a way of trying to see how we trust.
All right,
you know,
all right,
our
Mr.
leaders.
Paulinus, let's quickly go on to another issue, a very pertinent issue of importance here in Akwa Ibom State. We'll do that very briefly so we can move on to the other item that we have on our paper today. Akwa Ibom State Governor Pastor Moino has said that he'll be paying 13th month salary. This is not the first time he's doing it. He did it last year. And a lot of commendations are already trailing this particular move by the governor. First, I would ask you how you feel about it, and then I'll give you the next lap of the question.
Well, it's fantastic, it's commendable. But then, you know, we should ask or try to find out the motives of doing that. Because we all know that in Nigeria today, it is only the organized labor.
The governor put out his motive clearly. He said it was to just make Akwa Ibom people happy.
To Akwa Ibom State government should be in tandem with what is on ground. What I want to say is this, that let it not be the 13-month salary is not to buy, you know, the organized labor and what have you. And of course, while also commending the governor, let us not, you know, present it in the way as if it is something that has never happened before in this state, or as if it is something that is so extraordinary. For God's sake, motivation by way of incentive has always been part and parcel of government and what have you. So while the governor has come up, you know, to give the 13-month salary to the organized labor, the civil servants, for me, I would also want the governor to put much more energy on his Arise agenda, because that is what that will better the greater number of the indigenous and citizens of Akwa Ibom State. And if you ask me, much has not been done in that direction. You know, the parameters of performance that the government and the governor has set for himself, you know, is almost 2 years. I have not seen the government, you know, doing so much in that aspect of their Arise agenda. So what the workforce of the state, it is also better, you know, to look at other indices of governance and trying to see how the government can actually rise to the occasion and do very much more for Akwa Ibom people. Because if you ask me, for me, it seems as a state we are moving rather sluggishly when it has to do with
slow progress is better than none.
Well, you say slow progress is better than none, but we once have a state that was once vibrant. Because if you look at the Arise agenda of the governor, it talks about, you know, agricultural revolution. And if you want to look at
and there's Fridays for farming,
it's not enough, and that is misguided. If you ask me, we might not have the time. If you talk about agricultural revolution, you are rather talking about, you know, rapid positive change that be seen. That has not been happening. And you talk about the infrastructural maintenance and advancement. For me, the government has not been doing well, because we once have a state that 30 and above kilometers of road were constructed and delivered. And this is the government, when it started by flagging off 1.1 kilometer of roads, and people were applauding the government and said the government is doing well. I am saying that is not an advancement.
Okay.
If you have an administration that have been constructing over 30 kilometers of road, and you are telling us that you are coming to advance that, we should expect 40 and more kilometers of road and more roads and what have you, and not a government that will come and award construction for 1.1 kilometers
internal
of
roads, first of all. Internal roads.
That has not been an advancement. If we want
do you
to
know that a lot of,
and the problem we have been having, and especially in Akwa Ibom State, is we don't speak up.
Mr. Peter Paulinus, a lot of civil servants are happy with the governor in terms of his approval of the 80,000 naira.
They are very happy because in the city of the blind, one-eyed person is a leader. They are very happy because in the past 8 years of their last administration, the workers, they saw hell where their rights and entitlement were not given, were taken for granted. So coming to see somebody,
so now you will say the governor is doing well.
Coming to see somebody that is trying to discharge the constitutional obligations, the people are happy for it. But I am saying that there is nothing extraordinary about that.
The governor has been paying.
The ordinary thing that they are elected to do, that they are in the office to do, not to talk of the extraordinary.
Mr.
And
Paulinus,
the people seems to sing
totally
praise
out of time,
government.
Mr. Paulinus.
The people seems to sing praise government, and that is not good for our politics.
Okay, but a minute ago,
And the rest of it. To the workers, the organized labor. But I am saying, Mr. Governor, you have done well, but it's not enough.
Ago, you said the 13th month salary sounds like he's trying to buy organized labor. Is there something locking?
Well, I think we should wait, because the government set up a committee that will review that for 90 days, 3 months, which means the
Let's quickly take this reaction that we have on the screen right now.
Okay, this is coming from Ete Akwa Ibom. He says, I will always say it is a governor like Pastor Moino who takes the welfare of her civil servants seriously, that do not get affected by agitations from labor unions and the sorts. This is a really commendable move from the governor, and I say thus because it isn't the first Christmas we have received 13th month salary. Thank you, Mr. Governor. And there is another from Sejong Jim. He says, indeed, this is a true son of former Governor Godswill Akpabio. Without hectic screenings, he pays retired primary school teachers. Again, Akwa Ibomites today have remembered Akpabio Mba. Greater altitude awaits you in your political career. God bless your administration. The humanists.
Well, those are some of the reactions from Nigerians, the Akwa Ibomites, indeed, who feel that the governor's move is indeed intended to take care of the people of Akwa Ibom. And yes, you've mentioned that the governor has done well, even though you have your own reservations, and we're hoping that government is a continuum, like you have agreed. So we are believing and hoping that the government of Akwa Ibom State, led by Pastor Moino, will continue to do all it takes to ensure that it reaches the soul and hearts of the people of Akwa Ibom in terms of their welfare. Thank you very much, Mr. Paulinus Peter, for making our time to feature on Niger Delta today. Really, really robust time we had on the show this afternoon.